Welcome to the B&B Investing podcast for real estate investors. Fix and flippers and realtors exploring investment options with Airbnbs and short-term rentals through acquisition, leasing, or management to generate consistent monthly revenue. Join us for a chat with experienced and successful short-term rental investors to hear their story of how they got started and created wealth by building scalable businesses. We also explore various service providers and lenders that help make our businesses more efficient and maximize revenue in this awesome sharing economy. Welcome your host, Rich Monroe.
Hey everyone, Rich Monroe here with B&B Investing Live. Thanks for jumping on this week. As a reminder, B&B Investing Group helps new investors and seasoned investors navigate the options with short-term rentals. Whether you're doing acquisitions, master leasing, or managing properties, we kind of walk through some of the different niches that we have in the industry, as well as talk to a lot of the different service providers that kind of help in the short-term rental space. We also help new investors that want to scale a business. So if you're ready to take action and kind of grow quickly and add more units, feel free to reach out to me directly via Messenger, and we can have a quick call, see how we might be able to help you or point you in the right direction. And so I'm pretty interested this week. I've got Scott Brown on here with Steadily Insurance, and we're going to kind of be doing a deep dive today on looking at the insurance options for short-term rentals and for investors that own properties. And Scott, thanks so much for taking the time today. Would love to hear a little bit about yourself first before we jump into it.
For sure. Rich, I appreciate you having us on today. I'm excited to have this conversation with you and discuss a little bit more, into the landlord insurance aspect of the STRs and dive a bit deeper. So I'll start out just a little bit about, kind of the background of Steadily Landlord Insurance and how we got started a little bit here. So we had our founders actually started our company because they were real estate investors themselves. So they'd probably done about 10 or so fix and flips. And then they started getting into long-term rental units. And that's when they kind of started to stumble on we could call it maybe not so fun experience of trying to obtain landlord insurance back in the day. And that's where they started thinking of, hey, there's got to be something out there that's simpler than this, or a process that we can basically obtain more right time policy coverage, where it can be a lot more fast, seamless, convenient for these guys. And at the end of the day, obviously from a competitive pricing standpoint with the rates. So, insurance is kind of one of those line items that a real estate investor had, but the one that they had the least amount of control and insight into, really. Some people might even reference it as kind of like the black hole of a P&C. The lenders and the banks require you to have insurance. They have all these requirements around it. Then you go out to an insurance broker who then goes out to a carrier market. Then you go back and you get a 50 to 100 page document saying that you're covered. You're then presented with an invoice on what is you pay for, but you don't really understand what you're paying for. If you're paying for a landscaping company, you see that service. If you're paying for a maintenance company, you see that. If you're paying for a property management company, you can see what they do for that. But insurance is kind of one of those things that, again, it's a massive expense for owners, but it never really felt like they were truly in control of that. So that's kind of where, we didn't feel like we knew and understood, where the money was necessarily going. And we didn't have control over it again. So again, that's kind of how we got started and kind of turned into what we are at Steadily today.
So to reiterate, you guys are more kind of investor focused. You're not really serving the general marketplace where you have, just typical homeowner insurance. Your meat and potatoes are kind of where your founders came from, which is kind of the real estate investment world.
Yes. Yeah. Pretty much spot on. So we work with all different types that have, rental properties, whether it be LTR, STR. But to your point, we focus on this niche. So we spend all day, every day, and that's kind of the cool part about, like, we have all of our direct agents. Again, they're basically having conversations with real estate investors, like the people in your guys' investors group, working through from an educational, from a consultant standpoint, that when you think about, like, so really the landlord market in general, it doesn't really have a clear leader. So like this isn't auto insurance market where you have like Progressive and Geico necessarily, and others that are like super sophisticated with fine-tuned models working in real time. They can be improved, but they're already really high bar essentially. This is a market again with no clear leader. Like it's super fragmented. There's a few large carriers and a ton of regionals, and then none of them have really built something that very effectively writes in price risk essentially. What happens is they price to the average, and then they look at their losses at the end of the year. And if they're too high, they say, oh, we got to increase the price for everybody. So we're already seeing this, like in San Francisco, for example. They're saying that we need to charge more for the fires. Well, why would somebody in downtown San Francisco need to pay more for fires? There's not really an added risk there. So it's just like little things like that. So it's like the gist of why it happens is because there's a ton of additional data and technology out there, but it's less focused on the market carriers that might be big and they have much bigger fish to fry. So surprisingly, this market still works like it's 20 to 30 years ago. It's all on paper. It takes a few weeks. It's very manual. That's why we end up where we are. So again, like at Steadily, we said, let's go get much better data. Let's actually build from it from the ground up as a true tech insurance company. That's where what helps us be more right priced. Then this way, we don't need to get surprises at the end of the year and say, oh, we need to do increases.
Right.
Again, like we're solely focused on the niche market. And again, you can get a discount if you bring a portfolio and it's a high quality portfolio. You'll be able to get a bigger deal and get a lot more attention essentially. So we work with those direct investors, help educate them, help walk them through the process. And again, in insurance, it's a really popular term to use, but focus on one thing and do it really well. And that's essentially where we are with the landlord aspect of it, is that we want to be able to service right time, get really competitive products in there, help you guys get your coverage, and move on. Insurance is not meant to be the main point of these transactions. It's an afterthought, and we want to make it as much of an afterthought as possible by making it as convenient and easy for these guys to get their policies.
Got it. For those of you guys jumping on, feel free to throw any questions in the chat, but also throw a quick yes out there for me as well to let me know that you can hear us okay. They want to make sure that the audio is coming through good. So Scott, let me ask this kind of high level question before we start digging in here. So if and I do all of these things, and some of our members do all of these things, so I'm just trying to understand clearly in my mind when you guys would come into play, right? So if I buy a property to do a rehab, and I buy it distressed, and it's going to be obviously a 6-month period where I'm going to be fixing up that home. I'm not physically going to be there. No one's going to be there as guests. Are you able to cover me as kind of an absentee landlord during that time that I'm doing the rehab?
Yeah. So we can actually help you guys throughout the entire process. So to your point, if you guys are doing like a fix and flip, we can take that on. If you guys are going into a fix and rent type of opportunity, we can absolutely take that on as well. So those are no issues. Honestly, like we kind of specialize in that, where we can help you guys on the front end, making sure that you guys are going to be set up with the correct policies. Because to your point, a vacant policy is a lot different than a landlord policy.
Right. And
so
then you
definitely want to be converting it over.
Right. So then you convert it over once you've gotten the rehab done, and we kind of change it to a regular landlord policy at that point. Is there a different premium if I'm doing long-term rental versus short-term rental, or is it kind of the same?
Yeah, there is. So again, just thinking about the differences between what those properties are going to lead to. So with the LTRs, with the long-term rentals, what we're typically seeing is there's a lot less appliances. There's a lot less, goods essentially, or furniture in there even from the standpoint. Obviously, with STRs being a little bit more on the high-end furnished side, there's going to be a bit more coverage that's going to be involved with that aspect of making sure that a little bit more for the miscellaneous losses and whatnot. So STR, and again, also thinking of from an if you put on your investor hat, just thinking of the touch points. So like homeowners insurance, let's say that it's $1,000 for an annual premium for somebody. What we typically see is landlord insurance is going to be somewhere in the ballpark of 20 to 30% more expensive Again, considering that there's going to be renters at the house, there's a little bit more risk involved. There's less of that ownership aspect of the house that's going on. So there might be some more risk that something might happen in the property. Even more so, guys, considering like if you guys are doing a vacancy, either a vacant house type of coverage, or when you're going through a remodel, we'll think about nobody's living at those houses. So there's definitely stuff that could go wrong while that's going on. So that's a little bit more of a risky policy for us to carry. Now going back to long-term versus short-term, again, even more so to the extreme with a short-term rental, guys, we're having so many different guests coming in that's a lot more risk coming in. So there's going to be a little bit of a difference in that premium between long-term and short-term. But again, we can take on both. And I'll walk you through a little bit later on when we go through our portal, just to show you guys an example. But there's a different selection that we can go through for the STR versus LTR.
All right. And then lastly, because my business as well as several others, we don't typically own the property, but we're doing a master lease strategy to basically have a long-term lease, and for the purpose of doing short-term rentals. Do you guys have a policy that can cover us there?
Yeah, absolutely. And guys, we've got direct sales agents that you guys can work through on those specific type of property questions. Again, they're the best of the best. So what's really cool about our team is while we were hiring and growing, actually our direct sales agents, they were basically bringing in the top 10% from all other insurance companies. So we're really interviewing really high quality candidates to have talent that can be able, again, we want to be educational and consultative for you guys, so that when you guys have specific questions for your guys' property, because you guys understand your guys' property better than we do. But we specialize in this landlord insurance all day. So if you guys are imagining, our direct agents are spending all day, every day having conversations with similar type of people like you guys. So they're very well versed in dealing with certain specific issues and kind of working through all that.
So just to clarify, so if I've got 10 different rental units in one building, for example, and I've got a master lease on each of those 10 units, there's a landlord owner that I'm renting those units from. Is my policy going to be similar to like a renter's policy per se? And is it going to cover me for general liability and those types of issues beyond property damage?
Yeah, it'll still be similar to that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. And then the last kind of thought I have is, for my business, I actually have general liability as a separate insurance coverage for some of the various real estate investments that we work on. If I were to get one of our properties engaged with one of your policies, does that also include general liability? Does it allow me to not be required to have the other general liability policy separately?
That might be a question for a direct agent on ours.
I guess it depends based on the state and things like that.
Exactly.
Probably,
yeah, exactly, guys. So that's the beauty of all 50 states operating a little independently from each other. So again, guys, that's what we have our direct agents for, is that they can really answer those one-off type of questions to make sure that, again, you guys are kind of making the right choice. So we have, and again, I'll get to this in a little bit, but we have an online quoting tool. If you guys feel very confident that you can work through the portal, you know exactly what you're trying to get. Because really, when it comes down to it, 80 to 90% of the policies that we're writing are going to be very straightforward. They're not going to have too many one-offs. It's going to be pretty easy policy. And again, it usually comes down to a pricing standpoint. One really important thing on that price to make sure is that you're comparing apples to apples with those coverages. So we make sure that we give quality coverage at a good price, but really making sure it's not apples to oranges, whether the dwelling policy is a little bit lower, with a competitor or whatnot, really kind of making sure that you're taking an accurate assumption to make sure that you guys are making a good choice as far as which policy to work with and to move forward on. But absolutely, we can take on all of that for you.
All right. Very cool. So is there anything else you wanted to touch on before we kind of dig into the portal and show folks what it looks like to get a quote?
Yeah, I'd say we go ahead and dig into the portal and take a look at it, and we'll kind of walk through.
All right. Perfect.
All right.
Does everybody see our Steadily screen? Feel free to put some questions out in the chat, guys, as well.
Okay, I think it's working here. So everyone, if we're kind of working through on the screen share here, So I'm on our demo site right here. So you guys should see the B&B Invest logo when you guys are working through on your guys' specifically. But guys, it's super quick and easy to get a policy through us. You guys can really shop online. So we've got some people that are doing transactions. You can be sitting on your couch at home, whether it be Sunday morning or whatever, and you can be obtaining policies in less than 2 minutes, really. We've got some guys that are doing it in less than 50 seconds sometimes. So it just kind of depends on your guys' comfort level. But basically, guys, we're collecting basic information. So what kind of insurance do you need? We're looking for some landlord. We preload a lot of information. We have partner websites that basically have a lot of information on existing real estate properties. We're going to change it down here. How long do you guys typically rent for? Long term, 6+ months at a time, or short term? So obviously we've got this set up already for you guys. Who is this policy for? So if you're an individual or if you're a company, obviously that's very common in the investor world that we're going to have a lot of LLCs. That's no problem with us. We can work through that. No issue at all. Going to put in some basic information. How many claims have you guys submitted in the last 5 years? We're going to put 0. We're going to look for coverage for next month. We're going to say this is a new purchase. And then when were the electrical, plumbing, and heating systems last fully updated? We're going to go with after 1995. All right, lovely. So guys, you guys can see this is instantaneous, essentially, where you guys can get really quick coverage. You guys will see if you guys put long-term rental versus short-term rental, there's going to be a little bit of a price difference. As again, we talked about, the risk profile for short-term rentals is a bit higher. But really working through that, we've got a cool feature here, guys, on the back end. So this is what we talk about by trying to add more power to your guys' consumer choice, really kind of working through. So we have a few different ways that we can view this. So just consider what we were talking about earlier with working through different brokers and whatnot. So like if you guys were trying to change your guys' deductible, here, let me change this over here. So we have different ways that you guys can view it, and you just click recalculate quote, and then it comes out to what the cost is going to be for a year. So right here we see $26.05 for 5519 Woodson Street. Now, what's cool is we have toggle down options. So if you guys want additional coverage, you guys can go through and basically take a look at what the price is going to be. Same thing over here. Let's say that you guys want to raise your deductible up to $5,000. So you can toggle over here, and just like that, you can see that you guys are going to be saving about $240 so a year. Now, obviously, you guys understand the risk that comes with that is that if something happens and you guys need to file a claim, your guys' deductible is going to be $5,000. This kind of goes back into the conversation of this is your guys' risk profile, and you guys understand your guys' properties better than us. So whether it be, I'll go ahead and use the example, guys. I'm out of Kansas City. You guys might not enjoy it, but go Chiefs. So when we're working through, I had to get that in. We got a Super Bowl coming up here. So I always like to use the example here. So if we're trying to compare apples to apples, let's say, let's compare Kansas City to some city in Florida, guys. We know that the weather's been a little bit more difficult in the last few years in the state of Florida. Working through it, you guys understand from an investor standpoint, if you guys have multiple properties in different areas of the country, you understand the risk profile for that each region and weather related. So in Kansas City, let's hypothetically say that I just purchased a property. Let's say I consider it a pretty nice neighborhood. It's a brand new house, or it's a very new house. Let's say it's built in the last 10 years. I feel very secure given that in Kansas City, yes, the weather is not great, guys. But we don't have quite as extreme weather that could maybe be damaging to a house. If that's the case, maybe I do look at it like if I've got a portfolio of 10 to 20 properties in this area, or if I've got 20 properties across the country, well, I'm diversified enough where maybe I can make my deductible higher on my property in Kansas City and make that where I'm returning $300 back into my pocket on an annual basis. And I understand from a risk adjusted purpose that, again, it is a bit riskier if something does happen to that property, but understanding weather, I'm okay with taking this risk. I'm going to raise the deductible to $5,000. I'm going to get more savings on that one versus the property in Florida that I might be thinking, hey, it'd be good to keep my deductible low. It might be a little bit more likely that something might happen to that property. Heaven forbid, we don't like to think that something might happen, but it could. Let's go to another extreme here. Let's say we want to change the deductible to $10,000. Obviously, this is a large difference from a deductible standpoint, but you guys can see how big of a difference it is from $2,022 to over $2,600. So this is just something for you guys to keep in mind, that this is what we know right now, and especially in the STRs, this interest rate environment has made it a little bit more difficult for ROI. If we can do anything in our power to help return more investment to you guys, that's what we'd like to do. And so again, we are giving you guys the option to make your guys' educated decisions. And again, you guys can do this quote tool through our website all on your own, or if you guys want peace of mind that this is being done correctly, that you feel confident in the coverages that's written in your guys' policy, that you guys are going to be able to sleep easy at night knowing your investment's covered, then maybe that would be a good idea to hop on a call with our direct agents. Again, if you guys have been in this for a long time, you feel very well versed and comfortable, and you guys have done renewals for these policies for years and years, by all means, feel free to shop online. We don't necessarily mind either way. We're happy to help you guys finish that transaction either way. So again, we like to bring some different points to the conversation here. And again, so dwelling policy, this is covering for $326,000. Personal property, we can raise that higher if we want. Additional living costs and fair rental value. If something were to happen to the house that you guys are compensated for while renting is not available. Wind and hail deductible, $10,000. We have vandalism and malicious mischief already included. Water damage limitation is already at 10%. Ordinance law, obviously, if you guys live in an area that has a lot of ordinance laws that would make rebuilding something quite a bit more expensive, this is probably something that you guys would like to cover. Even solar panel coverage, limited renovation coverage, limited theft coverage over here. You guys can toggle between the different options. So again, like if you wanted higher one on that, you can go for 2022 to 2159. Or okay, let's go back to what was the regular one over here. We're a little bit different here. But that's kind of how we get back to where we're trying to get to. And medical payments, $525,000.
While we're on that screen, Scott, is there? Yeah. So what's the difference from what you guys provide versus me just going to State Farm or some regular insurance homeowner plan? What are some of the high points here that covers us specifically for rentals?
Yeah, so we write our own in-house MGA, and we've got a really solid line for that. Just guys, considering again, most of these companies, they're all great companies. The home and auto for State Farm, for farmers, all of these companies that are bigger, the landlord insurance, or let's say rental property insurance side of business, or line of business, I should say, it's a very small drop in the bucket for them. There's not as much focus going into it. Their agents aren't going to be as well versed in writing it. They're not going to be as well versed in knowing what the coverages are used for over here. Again, it's kind of a little bit more of an afterthought. So while the bundling might be some savings there, again, we've worked really hard being a tech-first insurance company to be able to right price our data or right price our policies to make sure our coverages are really strong. So again, we've really put all of our eggs in the basket of landlord insurance. So when we're focusing on this, we're trying to get you guys the best product possible. With that being said, and again, going back to, as far as a differentiator, what you guys are looking at right now, this policy or this website coverage where you guys can shop online, it's just not offered right now with some of these larger carriers. So if you're trying to go through State Farm, you're going to need to go through a broker agent. You need to work through, again, kind of that long drawn out process that's a lot more common from stuff 20 to 30 years ago. Obviously real estate's one of those industries that's been a little bit slower to adapt technology. So this is for a lot of the people that want to move faster, get an instant quote and close on their property. We don't like delays. And when you're working through with a lot of different brokers, again, like what we just went through with these deductibles flashing through, if you guys got a broker to quote prices from 10 different carriers for your guys' policy, and you guys are working through on that, it does take a while to kind of change the pricing around. So if you're asking, hey, I want to go from 2,500 to 5,000, well, then they have to go back to all different 10 carriers and basically say, hey, we want that deductible to be changed. That's going to be business days between. So again, it's just a little bit of a slower, antiquated process on that end too.
Well, and I got to tell you how refreshing that is. As an investor, having to go to closings on multiple occurrences for your investment properties. One of the hangups is you need to have your insurance coverage at closing and already show that it's teed up to be paid as a part of closing, or you've already prepaid it. And the headache, I mean, you're dealing with so many other things when you're trying to close on a property, the inspection period, making sure the appraisal gets done, all these other things that the insurance just adds another layer of potential hurdle that could delay your closing. And to have a tool available that you can instantly not only play around with the quotes, but also purchase the policy right there in the same place is huge. And so, guys, I just put the B&B Investing Steadily partner link in the comments as well, if you guys want to save that as you guys are looking at your investment properties. And if you want to get a quick quote on your existing properties to compare it to what your current insurance is, you can do that as well. Just as Scott kind of demonstrated, you can just plug in your address basically and immediately, start playing around with deductibles and coverages.
Yeah, and if you want to share the screen one more time, I'm over on the regular website over here. So guys, it's going to look the exact same. It's just the property address right here. You guys input your individual addresses. And
so are you on a different screen now, Scott? Because we're still seeing the same one from before.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, it's not too big of a deal. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay. Over.
All right, cool.
Okay, so yeah, I wasn't trying to say it's too big of a deal. Guys, it looks very similar to what the demo page showed. So you guys show up on the homepage, start typing in your guys' address, take a look. Especially like today, guys, when you guys are working through that, you guys, renewals are always coming up, especially the more properties that you guys have. We can really streamline all of that stuff to make sure that we're getting you guys' policies taken care of, get you guys the right coverage. Another one thing that I want to educate you guys on that's a big difference between us and a lot of these larger carriers is making sure that you guys have replacement costs instead of actual costs. So that's a huge piece as far as if you guys were to do, if something again happens to the property and you guys were needing to rebuild, it's basically making sure that you guys have enough money to rebuild the property for what it looks like today for the cost. Obviously, we've got a huge thing right now, which is inflation. And so inflation affects us doubly because it affects us on the materials and supply that we're doing to do the rebuild. And then on top of that, inflation with labor. So everything is more expensive to rebuild today. So really making sure that you guys are looking through getting the quality coverage to make sure that, again, what's the point of having the coverage if it's not going to be enough or if it's not going to be good enough? And at the end of the day, everybody wants really good, competitively priced, but it's so important to make sure that you have that quality coverage. And again, that's what we work through. If you guys want to work through us, whether it be through our website or if you guys want to talk to somebody on the phone for peace of mind that you guys are getting the right type of coverage, that's essentially kind of how we can help you guys close a lot faster. Again, you really hit the nail on the head, guys. This is a required thing. These lenders, they're requiring that you guys have this insurance. And so again, time kills all deals. And so what we can do is we can make the insurance an afterthought for your guys' home purchasing aspect. For your guys' next rental property, we can make it where it's literally an afterthought. You guys get the quote immediately, you purchase the policy, and you're able to close. And again, we want to continue to make it more and more of an afterthought, where it's not, hey, we don't know yet, or hey, we're waiting on the broker to get us a different. We want to toggle between options, or if we want an umbrella policy, okay, now we're working through on that. Well, guys, we can take care of all of this for you guys, and make sure that you guys get serviced properly.
All right, cool. So we have a quick question out there. I guess it's a clarification because we did touch a little bit on this early on, but do you do insurance for other types of rentals like midterm or long-term?
Yes, absolutely. So guys, on that demo page, when I was showing at the beginning, we clicked on STR for the example, since we're dealing with a lot of STRs. We absolutely, guys, long-term was really where we kind of started. obviously STR is a huge growing gap. And so that's kind of where we've also been servicing lately. But LTR is how our founders got involved in the space in the first place. Again, we were going through the process and they were sitting there saying, hey, why is it that you can get homeowners insurance on Geico and a commercial that we've seen a million times, 15 minutes or less? Why is it that you can get an instant quote online for homeowners insurance and auto, but you can't get it for landlord insurance? And so again, that's a simple solution that we came up with as far as
Right.
how to add some value and make it a quick transaction for everybody, where we can now hopefully be the Geico of landlord insurance, where we spend all day, every day nerding out over here to how we can continue to improve our product and better serve our clients.
Cool. Yeah, no, Chris is saying sorry you came late to the meeting, but no, Chris, it was actually a good clarification point because we didn't really touch on midterm versus long term. And so midterm obviously is a little different than short-term rental for rentals that are 30 days or more, and typically could be 2, 3, 4 months. And so furnished housing for midterms is a little bit different. So it's good to get kind of clarify that that's covered as well. That's a different coverage as well.
And we also cover, again, since you hopped on a little bit later, we also cover like vacant. We also cover rehab. We do a lot of different on that aspect. And then also, if you guys will take a look on our website, we cover a lot of different types of properties. So let me see here. We cover single family, we cover multifamily, vacant or restoration. We do apartment buildings, we do condo units, we do manufactured, build to rent. So again, guys, we cover it all. We can make sure that you guys get serviced if you guys need anything. On some of these policies, we just had a partner that had 76 policies written. They had 3 different 25-unit apartments, and they had about a $2 million mansion. So we're kind of working through that. They got serviced all 76 policies through us immediately. That was about less than an afternoon, and they got everything taken care of for the entire day or for the entire year.
So you don't have a category for it, but I'm assuming you also cover like tiny homes, container homes, ADUs as well?
Yep, mobile homes. Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right, perfect. All right, and so I've got another. You and I kind of touched on this before we jumped on, Scott, and I think it's productive to kind of touch on the fact that a lot of folks like myself rely on the air cover, the Airbnb insurance coverage for a lot of our short-term rental stays. And so there is some kind of misconception out there. Obviously Airbnb started out with $1 million policy. Now I think they've increased it to $2 million for hosts. Let's touch on a little bit of details there. I've used air cover for multiple, probably 50 or 60 times over the years, and it definitely is something good to use, especially with no deductible, right? So if we get damage that needs to get repaired, it's an easy way to get reimbursed, but we need to make sure that we clearly understand kind of what's covered through air cover and what's not covered through air cover, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. So guys, there's 2 main kinds of coverage. There's liability protection, and then there's damage protection. So liability protections, made against you by the guest. They have 1 million limit, or they might have just raised that actually. Damage protection, that pays for damage to you guys caused by the guests. So again, guys, existing renters or homeowners insurance, they might also protect your property from damage related to Airbnb or other home sharing services. However, the coverage often only applies as long as the rental property, just occasionally. So again, that's why it's so important to have a landlord policy or a commercial landlord policy, for the STRs working through. So Airbnb's host damage protection, it's not a form of insurance, although it does have similarities to personal property coverage on like regular homeowners. It pays for damage to your property, belongings if caused by guests, extra cleaning costs, loss of rental income if needing to cancel a booking. So like think vandalism, accidents, broken plates, pet damage, smoke, fire. If the claim is successful, you guys might receive compensation equal to cash value of your guys' property. But and kind of what I was keying in on earlier, unlike regular insurance, it can't be upgraded to replacement coverage. So there's always going to be just a little bit of a gap there, guys. So what we were kind of getting at earlier before the call started is just wanting to educate guys that we want it to be kind of considered more along the lines of landlord, and not obviously landlord insurance is very regularly required by the lenders and the banks, but landlord insurance should be the meat and potatoes of the plate. And really, the Airbnb coverage, you guys should be considering it as the smaller sides, the fruits and veggies of the side, or more supplemental to landlord insurance, in kind of a complementary aspect. Landlord insurance is still going to cover the bones of the property and kind of cover all of that aspect. So if something happens to the property, the landlord's insurance is still going to be taking care of it. And again, you guys, that's why we have it differentiated between LTR and STR. There's different requirements from a renting standpoint, how often it's rented out and by how many different people.
Yeah, so let me give you guys an example. So we had a 5-bedroom home in Eastlake, Atlanta, recently rehabbed, had it up as a short-term rental for several months. And we had a guest that stayed there and basically brought in a chef and had, kind of a brunch set up. And this chef, I don't know where he came from or she came from, but ultimately ended up having a grease fire in our kitchen, and destroyed the brand new kitchen cabinets, went up the wall, the stainless steel hood for the oven got burned and was destroyed. Now, thankfully, they got the fire put out, and we ended up having probably about $1,500 worth of damage, labor, and getting everything repaired. Now, we were able to successfully get fully reimbursed through the air cover process and didn't have to go the insurance route. But had that basic fire not been able to be put out and cause more major damage to the home, the air cover is not gonna cover that. And so, and in some cases, if it's a typical, just a regular homeowner's policy, because you had a guest in there and you don't have the short-term rental specific policy, you could potentially run into some issues with coverages there as well. And so that's why it's super important to make sure that you've got the right policies in place, because if something were to happen like that, obviously you can't control what a guest or someone else is going to do while it's there in the property. And so you want to make sure that you've got full protection for that and that you've got the ample coverage, because you may get certain things covered and not others, like Scott was mentioning, full replacement costs versus a lower number that you're going to have to make up the difference. And so it's definitely worth it to make sure that you've got the right coverages in place to be proactive for that.
Rich, you hit a great point bringing up about the homeowner's insurance. So guys, a really common misconception, at the time of purchasing the property, there are lenders out there, and again, they're not very involved in the insurance aspect of it. So as long as there's something out there, sometimes they'll be okay with that. It's very important to understand, if you guys have a homeowner's insurance policy on the house, again, if something were to happen and a claim is made, the claim, very good chance it's not going to be accepted. They're going to kick back that there is a renter in there. So again, like, you guys can have homeowners insurance, you guys can think that you're covered, but if you guys have renters in there, the homeowners insurance, it's going to go moot and it's probably not going to be accepted. So again, that there's risk on that end. There's a little bit of an education. So like, we have investors, very oftentimes that they're accidental real estate investors, where they have a home, something happened, they ended up buying another property and they decided to keep that first property to be a rental unit. Well, now they're an investor. All too common when they move into the second home, that first home, they keep a homeowner's insurance policy on. And unfortunately, when something happens, again, the homeowner's insurance, they're going to come out, the adjuster's going to come out and say, hey, we're not going to be able to accept that. There's renters at this unit. This isn't this is not a homeowner's policy, essentially. So there's a huge risk on that end. Just being educated to make sure you guys' properties have the right coverage or the right insurance policy as well.
Yeah. And so lastly, I want to also touch on the kind of the other option a lot of us are doing, including myself, and that's managing other people's properties. And so as a manager of short-term rentals, you're the expert. And so you should be able to educate your owners and your clients before you go live with that listing that, hey, you need to make sure that you've got the right coverage. Your existing policy may not cover us for the fact that you're now going to be doing short-term rentals. Here's a link. Let's get a quick quote and see how that compares to what you're currently doing. It'll replace your existing policy, but it'll also give you the added benefit and the coverages that we're going to need to run this as a short-term rental. And so even as a manager, it's good to kind of have this knowledge and this ability to be able to present this to your clients. And so that if something goes wrong, you as the manager have kind of covered your bases, right, in terms of providing the correct options to that client.
And I'd also add to that, if you're a property manager, are you listed as additional insured? That's a real simple question, because if you're not, you're liable.
Yeah.
And all too often too. So we work with quite a bit of property management companies and partnerships. It's been really interesting for me to kind of understand. So a lot of them in those agreements, they literally have it point blank. 95% of the time they have it from a compliancy standpoint. You're required to have landlord insurance. The actual follow through, as far as making sure that they do have it, is not always up to as much of a par as I would have expected, if I'm being candid. So again, if they don't have the proper insurance, guys, we hate to go there, but we're using examples here. If a vendor comes out, or someone's working on a tree on your guys' property, or something outside the house, and they slip and fall and they break their leg, that will come back on the property management company if there's not proper landlord insurance. And then on top of that, if there is proper landlord insurance and you guys aren't listed as the additional insured, there's going to be issues. Claims are going to be filed onto you guys. You guys are going to be saying, whoa, this is supposed to go to the landlord, but because you're not listed as an additional insured, it's not. You guys are having to go through that entire process in the legal system, and it's not fun. And so just a real quick kind of follow through, we have the ability, if you guys are property management companies, where we can have it where anybody that is working through you guys as a landlord, we can automatically put it in where you guys are going to be listed as the additional insured, to make sure that, again, peace of mind for everybody all around. It's a win-win-win for everybody. They get the policy that they need. You guys know that you guys are covered if something happens, and everybody's happy.
Yeah, no, I like that. We also teach our clients how to manage other people's properties, and that onboarding checklist should definitely include that requirement in our management agreement. And then also, before you go live, check that box that you've obtained a copy to show that you've been added as an additional insured, for sure. Super
Absolutely.
important. All right. Well, Scott, this has been totally productive today. I really appreciate you jumping on. I know, guys, there's several other options out there in the space that provide landlord insurance to short-term rental investors and long-term rental investors. But I was definitely impressed with the technology that these guys bring to the table. And not only that, just the mindset of kind of where they're coming from. Some of these other larger companies, and I've run the numbers, these guys, Steadily is very competitive with some of the competitors that are out there. And so I would encourage you guys, before you make your final decision, it takes a couple of minutes, as you saw, as Scott demoed, get a quick quote, see how these guys compare to what you're looking at, and definitely make it a part of your process as you move forward in your investment business. So Scott, really appreciate it coming on. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and stay tuned in B&B Investing Group. We'll see you guys next week. And if you want to get ready to scale your business and start adding more units and need some help with that, feel free to reach out to me directly, and we'll check in with you. So thanks everybody again for joining. Thanks again, Scott. Take care. We'll have a good one.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for jumping on the B&B Investing podcast this week. Please click on the subscribe and like button below. For more trainings, property tours, and content, you can join my B&B Investing Facebook group by clicking below. If you are ready to grow your short-term rental portfolio and maximize your monthly income, you can click on the link below to schedule a quick strategy call with Rich or someone from his team to see how we can help or point you in the right direction. Stay tuned for our next episode, and hope to see you on the B&B Investing Group podcast.